Hey guys, welcome back to Contest Prep University. I'm Joe Klemczewski with Adam Atkinson. We're on the second half of the peaking ladder. So rung number 6, which is going to be protein and fat. So just like we talked about how important carbs and water are as a set, as two variables that really complement each other, protein and fat is very similar because at this stage in the prep, probably most of your fat is coming from your protein sources, maybe some extra if you've had to increase fat a little bit. But Adam, I know I typically keep protein just pretty stable. You know, I want as many variables to be the same as possible, so the ones that I am manipulating have more predictable value. But I will say I will sometimes escalate protein and fat a little bit at the end of the week just because somebody's burning through carbs so quickly. I need more of a carb-sparing approach at the very end. So that's when I will break my mold of basically keeping protein and fat the same. Do you do anything in manipulating those two variables?
Yeah, I have when people are competing, there's a range of what's appropriate in terms of tightness and, being too soft. And we're really on the red line of almost being too hard. So with her, when we have been bumping up her carbs, I have been giving her some more protein just for stability, because I'm afraid her met rate's going to pick up, and we're just going to be, way too conditioned. So, and we've actually been bumping some fats up as well. That can be really helpful for some stability. I might bump fats up if somebody's having some digestive issues, maybe some digestive slowdown, and that's something else we could talk about. But that might be another reason I bump that up. But also, too, sometimes carbs will get so high that it's impossible to hit the lower protein and the lower fat without having those come up with it as well.
Right. And I will say, we talked about this in a previous series, but, the fat loading myth. Fat as a food source, fat intake, dietary fat, does not load muscle tissue. Glycogen does not take fat and turn it into glucose for your muscle tissue. If you're in a ketosis type diet, your body will turn fat into glucose to use as energy, but it's never going to do a double step process of converting it to glucose and then say, oh, I guess I didn't need that, so now I'll convert it back to fat, which would be the norm. So you're only going to be using what you need. But here's what fat does. As Adam mentioned, it can slow down the use of carbohydrates so that it's more impactful. The carbs you are consuming, you're not burning through them as quickly. You can stay a little bit fuller because your body's not using those carbs as much. And so it can be a valuable source to increase that a little bit just so you're not using as much carbohydrate, because it can get a little dangerous if you're all of a sudden moving carbohydrates from 200 to 300 to 400 to 500, and you just keep having to go through these monstrous elevations during peak week just to keep somebody full. You would have a way better approach if you let protein and fat come up a little bit so you didn't have to rely on carbs as much.
Absolutely. Especially with carbs being thermic, you can just make somebody a machine where they're just burning through those carbs. And I think a lot of people listening will be like, oh my God, that's what happened when I was raising so many carbs. I should have raised some fats to kind of pump the brakes so I could get full. I always had a really good thermic effect happen to me with carbs. And I kind of would say I had a little bit of a runaway metabolism when I peaked. And I think fats can definitely help slow that down and help me regain some fullness, which was really important to me because, conditioning was always good for me. It was size that I needed probably the most. So coming in conditioned and full is definitely key for me.
Now, if you have gone through a really good metabolic building phase at the end of your contest diet, and you've tailored that into a progressive linear load, then by the time you get into peak week, protein and fat may already be up enough that you can maintain that stability. So again, I would always rather have a lot of my variables being very linear and consistent so I can rely on the small changes I'm making in other areas like carbs and sodium, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But these are definitely good reasons, Adam, on why you may need to escalate those a little bit at the end. So Thank you guys for watching and listening. We are moving right into our next episode on the minerals, sodium and so forth. So we will catch you on that one.